Hello and welcome to another episode of Balls and Brew, the flagship sports podcast of the Morgan You Know Podcast Network. I am your intrepid host of most podcasts on the Morgan You Know Podcast Network. My name is Rod Morgan. Thank you so much for joining me. With me, as he has been with me for almost 20 years now, arguing with me about the most inane sports and pop culture topics we could ever think of. He's my guy from North Carolina. He's 6'2". He's completely bald. He is Chris King. Hello.
Hello, Internet. Hey, Rod. How's it going?
Excited because, Chris, we are bringing back an old friend of ours. It is getting closer to being the time of year where we have to welcome in our good friend. We used to refer to him as the Anonymous Gambler.
It's about time.
Now he's just our good friend, the handicapper, Josh Williams. Josh, hello.
What's up, boys? It's August. That means it's preseason football time. Let's go, NFL.
That's right. We're bringing you back in. So just so the listeners know that are big fans of yours out there, I reached out to you a couple of different times to be like, Williams, do you want to talk some NBA? Do you want to talk some this? Do you want to talk some that? And you tell the listeners that you chose to lay out, that you were not on an exile imposed by me. You tell them, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I had some other stuff going on. I couldn't get on, but yeah, it's NFL season, so it's I'm ready to go. So
Okay. I think the biggest NFL training camp story is probably in my neck of the woods, my favorite team, but I might be accused of being biased. So, Mr. Williams, I'll just ask you, is the biggest season of early NFL camps down in Indianapolis, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Indianapolis. Carson Wentz going down 5 to 12 weeks with some type of like broken bone in his foot. And then Quentin Nelson, probably the best guard in all of football, going down with the exact same injury like the next day. It's like some weird stuff going on in Indy training camp right now.
What is the deal with that designation, 5 to 12 weeks? That is a big gap. And I've been hearing it a lot lately.
Yeah, it's like, I'm no doctor, but it seems like they're not real sure if it's a broken bone or if it's some type of tendon. The broken bone would be a lesser time period frame. The tendon would be the more adjustable time frame. So I don't really know what's going on there, but to have both of them, you know, in a matter of 2 days have the same injury is just bizarre. So we're off to a weird start for training camp this year.
So, Mr. Williams, let me ask you this. Our friends in Vegas, did the numbers adjust on the Colts? I mean, I'm sure you had some thoughts on it, right? I mean, like, how much worse are the Colts if they've got to go with either Brett Hundley, who they just signed, or Jacob Eason, who is a second-year QB who got no time on the field last year?
Yeah, their odds went down. Tennessee went up to win the division. I think you have to lay like minus 180 now on the Titans. Yeah, in my opinion, Eason's really not athletic. He was thought of highly out of high school, but really hasn't lived up to the hype since. And reports haven't been that great out of camp either. There's been some turnovers, a lot of short passes, not a lot of confidence shown, which is understanding when you're throwing him into the fire. And that Colts Seahawks total in week 1 has already went down from 52 total points down to 46. So in my opinion, if you're still a believer in the Colts, which they have the best coach in the division, they have the best offensive line in the division, they have the best defense in the division. My opinion to bet the Colts is after week 5 because they start off with a really tough schedule. They start off with Seattle and the Rams at home. Then they have to go at Tennessee, at Miami, at Baltimore. So if you're throwing Jacob Eason out there, I mean, it could be 0-5, maybe 1-4. But I like to bet the Colts to win the division after that week 5 because the Titans schedule from week 6 to 10 is a gauntlet. It's Buffalo, KC, at Indy, at the Rams, and versus the Saints. So We're going to find the best number on the Colts if you're still a believer on them winning the division.
Versus the Saints and potential MVP candidate Jameis Winston. You left that part out when you were talking about the Saints, Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
Chris, let me ask you this question.
You love some Jameis.
I do. Chris, let me ask you this question because you're a Colts fan here. Do we ultimately see one of the two quarterbacks that are in camp for the Colts right now take the field week 1, or do the Colts have another move in them, and that's who actually starts week 1?
I don't know if they have another move in them. I mean, you're going to have to give up something at this point, and do you really want to give up anything? I wouldn't. Like he said, Best defense in the division. I don't want to break that unit up. Best offensive line in the division, even though we just lost Nelson. I don't want to give anybody else up. So where do you go?
Bolo tie. That's where you go. Bolo tie.
I don't know if he's coming back from retirement.
He played the offense last year?
Yeah, that's a hard sell, I think. I think you're going to see Eason
half a year?
Week 1.
Come on. Couldn't we convince the Bolo tie for half a year, Mr. Williams? Come on. Can we convince the Bolo tie to come back for just half a year? I mean, and ultimately, same question to you. Do you think the Colts are going to go with one of these two quarterbacks to start the year?
That's tough because I don't know if it's 12 weeks Wentz is out, I got to believe they bring somebody in. If it's 5 to 6 or 7 weeks, then they might just roll with whatever combo, the trio that they have in the camp right now, which has 0 career starts, and just take their 1-4 start, or maybe if things go right, 2-3 start. I've heard whispers of possibly Mariota being traded for, or Jimmy G, or Nick Foles.
Didn't Hundley
they have enough money for that?
I thought Hundley started a few games for Green Bay a couple years ago when Aaron Rodgers got hurt.
Possibly, but I thought
he wasn't good.
0 across the board, but you could be right. But
I'm pretty sure he came in. It was a couple years ago, his rookie year or his second year. I can't remember. But I think he played maybe 9 games.
This is entirely too much Brett Hundley talk right now, Chris. I appreciate that you have that knowledge, but it's entirely too much Brett Hundley talk right now. Mr. Williams, let me ask you this. So, potential names out there. You threw a few out there. I have a name that I know is a little impractical because you don't see many within division trades, but the Jacksonville Jaguars have no need for one Gardner Minshew. Is there a chance? Is there any chance, Mr. Williams, that you think that they might be able to get rid of the? That's what I mean. Can a guy get cut that we're not seeing get cut, and the Colts maybe just sign him? Is there any hope?
I don't know. Yeah, I've heard some very, very smart football people throw out Gardner Minshew to the Broncos, and that's kind of makes you kind of question what's going on in Denver with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. But yeah, I mean, it's a possibility, but I don't see them trading inside the division, but I wouldn't say it's 0% chance.
How about just somebody from maybe 2.5 hours north up in Chicago? I mean, come on. You can't have Nick Foles, Fields, and the Red Rifle himself, Andy Dalton, all in the same quarterback room all year long, right? Mr. Williams, you're a Bears fan. I mean, can't you see one of those guys going for a little bit of something from the Colts?
I don't think they'll do Foles because Foles still has $5 million left on his deal this year and like $4 million left next year. And I don't think the Colts want to get in on that. Even though at Foles' press conference the other day, he was basically begging for Frank Reich to take him over.
I heard that.
So, yeah, we'll see. It's a crazy QB carousel right now in Indy.
All right, you're throwing water on it. Chris, your ear should perk up a little bit here. Another training camp I want to check on real quick is the Dallas Cowboys. Chris, your ears should be perking up here. This is your team. Always exciting in Dallas land. Jerry Jones always gives us news, and Dak Prescott is back. Chris, let's start with you. How excited are you about Cowboys camp?
I've been excited, but Prescott got banged up a little bit a few days ago, so that's never good. It's going to be down to our defense, though, and so far, I don't think they did enough in the offseason to address all those needs. I think their D-line would be better. I think Lawrence has got to be the leader, and if he plays well, they have a chance to do well. But if the defense can't keep the other team's offenses off the field, then it's going to be 8-8.
Mr. Williams, what say you about the Cowboys with Dak Prescott coming back? There's always high hopes in the Big D.
I think Dallas is going to be a fantasy factory. I think that offense is going to be fantastic. The offensive line should be a lot more healthy. I think PFF ranks them number 6 right now, getting Tyron Smith back and just getting that line more healthy. Zach Martin. Zeke's lost some weight in the offseason, so he looks a little fresher. And Dak is the favorite right now to win Comeback Player of the Year. So I agree with Chris. It's not really – the offense is going to be awesome if everyone stays healthy. It's the defense that you got to be worried about. And I think it's a 2-team race in the East with them and the WFTs.
The WFTs. I love that. All right, so we talked about Dak's coming back from an injury. We talked about the big injury that's affecting the Colts. Is there any other injuries we should touch on here real quick while we're going around the camps that are quite noteworthy as this season's getting ready to go here?
Well, for all of us Bears fans out there, Tevin Jenkins and Jermaine Ifedi haven't practiced recently for the Bears. Those are the two offensive tackles for a team that's either going to start Andy Dalton at quarterback or a rookie QB who kind of took his time progressing through his reads in college. So that's not great. And then the rookie fifth-rounder left tackle that the Bears took, Nagy actually said recently in a press conference, I don't know if he can play left tackle. So that sounds encouraging too for the upcoming Bears schedule. And then Tariq Cohen doesn't sound like he's anywhere close to being ready for the Bears either. So doesn't sound. And Eddie Goldman, a big defensive tackle for the Bears, is on the COVID list. So
high hopes in Chicago is what you're saying.
Not a lot of great news out of Indy or Chicago so far. One minor fantasy note: the Giants just lost their third string tight end today. He's of no relevance, but Kyle Rudolph, the backup tight end, is coming off foot surgery, so he's unlikely to start the season. So that could mean more targets for Evan Ingram, and he's currently going outside the top 150 right now in fantasy drafts. So just throwing that out there for anybody who loves Evan Ingram.
Speaking of fantasy, let me ask you this then: when is the proper time to have your fantasy draft? We have enough time here. When are you as an expert fantasy player? When's the perfect time to have the fantasy draft?
I love having it. My season-long draft, I love having it on Labor Day weekend, either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. You get some of the college games going on. You throw it on the TV in the background. The football doesn't start until the Thursday afterwards, so you got time to adjust your rosters if your rules apply for that. So I just love Labor Day weekend. I usually take that a couple days off. Great weather, Blueberry Festival around here in your neck of the woods. So I love Labor Day weekend is my favorite weekend of the year. It's no question.
Shout out P-Town, the Marshall County Blueberry Festival. Chris, we tend to have a different tradition in our fantasy league. How do you like our tradition that we tend to have? We've done it, I think, the past 4 or 5 years now.
Where we do it the week after the last preseason games?
No. Actually, I think the last few years we've literally done it on the Thursday night of the opening game, and everybody just has to be aware that if they're drafting people who are in the opening game, they're going to be in their lineup.
Yeah, we have. That's right. We have the last couple of years definitely gone Thursday night, 9 p.m.,
because then you still have time to, for all the weekends games, you still have time to make the adjustments, but you just got to, know accordingly for the two teams that are playing that Thursday night. And that I've always liked that because I'm a fan of the weeknight online draft.
Yeah, I am too. I think the weeknight draft, you get people that you are competing against maybe not quite as focused as they should be, and sometimes you can get a steal in here or there. But you always got the guys that want to reach for defenses way too early. That makes me laugh.
You've done that a time or two. Don't sit here and throw too many stones. Mr. Williams, let me ask you a couple questions here before we get out you the door, because I know there's a lot of folks out there in sports land that are excited to hear Chris and I's takes about the Chicago Cubs, and we, of course, have Evan Altman's takes when we're talking Cubs, so he'll be up in the next segment. But you sat out the NBA season with us, but I have a feeling you maybe had a couple of long-term plays. Care to tell us how the NBA season worked out for you?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I took the Suns at 14-1 to win the Pacific Division, I think back in January. Asked you guys about that. You guys said I had a pretty good chance to cash that ticket, and I ended up doing that, so that was cool. Took a shot on Donovan Mitchell to win MVP at 75-1. Obviously did not win that, but I still don't mind that one.
Those are huge numbers. I probably would have done that too.
Yeah, my thinking was I'm just going to take the best player on the team with the best record at the time, which was Utah. So I don't feel real bad about losing that. And then probably the one that was my best bet was Tibbs for Coach of the Year. I got it at only 5-1. I'm kicking myself because I missed out on it when 25-1. When I saw that the ESPN poll had 16 beat writers predict the Hawks-Knicks game, which Vegas had as a 50-50 toss-up series because it was the 4-5 series. When I saw 14 out of the 16 beat writers pick the Knicks to win, I was like, oh, I'm golden for Thibodeau to win Coach of the Year because them just overvaluing the Knicks there, I was like, I think I'm good with Thibodeau there. So, and they did outproduce their win total by 18.5. Going into the season. So he did an awesome job. They just didn't have enough in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, they were completely outclassed by the Hawks, and they basically just brought their same entire team back. But that's for next week, when Chris and I will dive back into the NBA and all of the crazy machinations of the draft and free agency. But any baseball bets that you are still watching out for?
Yeah, man, I hate to say this as a Cubs fan because this killed me, but when the Brewers were in third place back in May, I took a future on them to win the pennant at 14-1. I think they're currently down to like plus 450, so I'm getting some good closing line value there. My thinking was the three-headed pitching monster of Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta are going to be tough in the playoffs. And I actually hope they get the 2 seed because then they would play the winner of the East, either the Mets or Braves or Phillies, whereas the West is going to beat each other up with the Giants and Dodgers and Padres. So, it's probably a long shot, but I love the Brewers pitching, so I got that going. And then I have a few of the NFL. I have Denver over 7.5 wins. I like that.
Ooh, okay.
Like the
so
whole
you're
team.
in for the Drew Lock experience, huh?
I like the whole team except for the quarterback. So I'm kind of hoping that Teddy
Two Gloves time.
Yep, I'm hoping that he takes over.
It's a tough division too.
It is a tough division. I've also got Chris isn't going to like this one, but I've got the WFTs to win the division at plus 275.
You got to take that.
I don't think they should be plus 275.
Listen. The NFC East is a literal toss-up every year until like week 15.
I think you can count out the Giants. They're already brawling with one another.
Listen, you could try to count out anybody, and then that team will end up in second place a game and a half out or something weird. There was a year I remember where everyone was like 1-4 or 2-3 to start the year, and it was just a mess. You never know with that East.
All right. Well, listen, we'll have more time to get into all that NFL stuff. But Mr. Williams, I want you to leave us with this great little tease that you sent to me about a future bet you have that ties into a commentator. So I'm completely intrigued here. So leave us with your last little nugget here.
Yeah, man, there's rumors that one of my favorite all-time commentators, this is his last year, and that's none other than the great Al Michaels. He's done 20 years of Monday Night Football. He's done 15 years of Sunday Night Football. And as a teenager, he grew up in L.A. Now, why is that important? Where is the Super Bowl being played this year? It's out in L.A. in that most ridiculous stadium spaceship that they have. And when he was 30 years old, he called San Francisco Giants baseball games. He was actually the commentator for the infamous Game 3, the earthquake in the 89 World Series with San Francisco and Oakland. So he has San Francisco ties. He is calling the Super Bowl this year, and like what I said, is projected to be his last call on the mic. The last World Series he did was in 95 when Atlanta beat Cleveland. But the last game he called, Cleveland won Game 5. NBC had Game 6, so he didn't get to call that game. NBC and ABC were like in a bidding war back then for the World Series.
Oh, wow, they flipped World Series games on different networks?
Yeah, dude, it was crazy. So his last game he called, Cleveland won, but Cleveland ended up losing the World Series. So how is this all narrative street? I'm going back full circle with Michael's broadcasting career. I'm going to call the Super Bowl in the state of California, where he's called so many games. I'm saying it's going to be San Francisco versus Cleveland in the Super Bowl. I don't know who wins yet.
Look out.
I can't figure out the Al Michaels narrative street, but I'm going with those two teams.
Look out, Chris.
A great Super Bowl. I'll watch that. I don't know how San Francisco gets there.
He goes to his 2 stalking horses as well. How often has Williams rode Cleveland and San Francisco on this podcast? Williams, right? I love you so much.
Oh, that's great.
I'm Team Shanahan, baby.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful, Mr. Williams. It was so good to hear your voice again. We will be hearing you many more times here in the upcoming weeks as we gear up for the NFL season. You will get to hear Mr. King's voice on the other side of a break here with Mr. Jamriska. And hopefully, Mr. Jamriska will be joining us in interview style with Mr. Evan Altman. Stay tuned to find out.
Rizzo was the linchpin of the 2016 Cubs, the team that broke the curse, finally brought a World Series to Wrigley Field. He was as important a player as any of them, beloved in Chicago, will never, ever have to buy a meal there. And now he drills one deep to right field. There it goes, see ya! His first Yankee home run, and it gives the Yankees a 1-0 lead.
Alonso at first and 2 out, and Baez gets one in the air to left field. Winker going back, looking up, and it's out of here! Javi Baez with a 2-run homer. A towering shot. His first home run as a New York Met, coming in his first game for the Mets.
1, 2, cha-cha-cha.
Deep left field. It is a home run! Chris Bryant, in his first game as a Giant, has hit a home run for the Giants' first run of the day.
All right, we are back after kicking it around NFL training camps with our guy, Josh Williams. There was a seismic shift in the sports world earlier this week that actually got me to pay attention to baseball. And as much as I could sit here and say that for the last 2 years, I have warned everyone from the rooftops all about Tom Ricketts being someone not to be trusted, and as much as I had known there was a chance that many Cubs would be leaving the north side, when it actually happened, it still sort of felt like a punch to the gut, and it was just, I almost didn't know what to think. So if we're going to talk Cubs, there's no one better to talk Cubs with than our guy. He is the founder of Cubs Insider. He has done great work covering all the ins and outs with the Cubs over this past week. But I'm going to ask him today to put on just his Cubs fan hat and answer my first question here. Evan, reporter aside, what did it feel like that day when it all first started going down?
It felt basically starting from the news that Rizzo was about to go to the Yankees. It was like getting kicked in the dick repeatedly over a period of like 24 hours is kind of what it felt like.
Yep. I'd say there's no better way to put it. It really was.
Yeah. And it's like, even if you knew that stuff was coming, normally, and it was like, it was weird to watch John Lester go. So, and then it got, but cherry on top, freaking John Lester being traded to the Cardinals of all places, like on top of everything else going on. You're like, come on. Like, does God hate us? Or what, for those of you out there who maybe don't sway that way, whatever force in the universe maybe impacts things, whatever karma or what, man. But John Lester playing for the Cardinals on top of everything else that happened was just, it was such an unceremonious finality to the whole thing. And you're just like, well, and there wasn't even, there were rumors kind of here and there, but it wasn't like a whole lot of strung out. It was just like, oh, Anthony Rizzo and they're talking with you. Oh, he's traded. Oh, there goes, here goes this move. Here goes, and the one guy they hold on to is like Zach Davies. Like you couldn't, and then he, laid an egg right after. That was difficult. Whether you agree with the fact that they needed, quote unquote, to do this or not, it's still really odd to basically watch almost nothing that's left from that World Series team of any importance other than Contreras and Hendricks. I mean, you can, I guess, if you want to throw Jason Hayward in there, but rough.
It certainly was. Jimmy, you go back with the Cubs a little ways. Do you recall ever feeling anything remotely like what you probably felt that day that we were describing? Because it just came so quick, right? It was just one right after the other within a span of a couple hours.
The Baez news hurt a lot because I was not expecting that, and are you kidding me? Baez too? No, I've never really felt anything like that. We had obviously the Bartman game and things like that, but that's different. There was a time that Ryan Sandberg almost signed with the Indians, like was very, very close to. That kind of got me, but he didn't do it. So this was the worst couple of days to be a Cubs fan for sure.
Chris, I'll go to you. You're certainly older than all of us by quite a lot on this podcast right now. So, I mean, spin us a yarn here, old man. Like, certainly you're going to defend this, right? Like, you're always Mr. Contrarian here, right? So you were probably happy about this. What'd you think when it was going down?
Oh, it was very much the opposite of happy. I was disappointed, upset, sad, frustrated, angry. All the above. It was not a fun day for a Cubs fan. And it's one of the biggest problems I have in professional sports, period, this idea of teams giving up. Whether you want to call it tanking like they do in the NBA or giving up like in baseball and to a lesser extent football. I really hate it. This is the first time any of the franchises that I follow and I'm a fan of have ever done anything like this where they've essentially just given up. It was a tough swallow for me.
It certainly was. I've been angry at Tom Ricketts for a long time, and I must admit, on some weird level, I got a little bit of glee out of everybody just absolutely lighting Tom Ricketts on fire that day, and the fact that he was trending on Twitter nationwide and all the above. But Evan, I'll ask you to put your reporter hat back on here a little bit, and this is a tough question, I know, but if somebody who isn't a everyday follower of the ins and outs of baseball and farm systems and tax and all of that kind of stuff, the easiest way you could try to explain to someone why their favorite players, who certainly are not old and certainly didn't demand to be out of Chicago, were traded away, what would you tell them?
Because the ultimate goal of a billionaire team owner is to increase the value of their franchise. And for a Cubs team that relies, as they say, for 70% of their revenue on game day activities, for a team like that had no game day activities throughout the entirety of the shortened 2020 season, that claims to have suffered biblical losses, the Cubs still increased their value by 5% as a franchise in 2020. They are valued as the 22nd ranked franchise in the world. So we're talking about European soccer, we're talking about NFL, all that. Cubs are number 22 in the entire world in terms of their value. So when that is your ultimate goal, and now you have fans back and everything else, and the cash flow is maybe a little bit more positive, there's really no reason, and there is a reason, but if you are in the business of finance, and particularly if you got into that business and got your wealth from the silver spoon that you were born with, you may not have a great depth of the knowledge of how this fan base really works. And then there's the fact that the Ricketts family is heavily leveraged in terms of the debt that they have sunk into the areas around Wrigley. And so the cash, as much as the value is very, very important for the franchise, that's what they want to grow, the cash flow is really important to them because they have to service the debt on all those buildings that they bought and the stuff that they did with Wrigley and everything else is around there. And so when that accrues at a high level and you can't service it very easily without the cash flow and the revenue coming in, there are maybe some cuts you've had to make. And we've seen that over the last few years. Don't believe them when they talk to you about how much money they're spending and how they're always this high a payroll. They were that high because they hit a bunch of big contracts, and that's the last time they did that was before 2018, in 2018 with the Yu Darvish deal. And since then, they really haven't added any meaningful contracts. The salaries have dropped significantly, and they're very, very, very little on the books now in the future. So that's kind of a long way around it, but it's what really matters. And this is not me making this up or surmising this. This is straight from the mouth of Tom Ricketts himself, that the ultimate value of sports team ownership is the increasing value of the franchise and not the actual money that you make year over year.
Yeah, and I saw something recently where the tax write-offs that these guys then just alone get because they're sports owners is half the game as well. So, but Jimmy, I know you had something that you were wondering how much it factors in, and certainly based off of what Evan was just saying right there, I know your question may be pretty relevant here.
Does the Marquee Network deal really screw over the Cubs and Cubs fans? Because you would think that they would have gotten a lot more money and been available in a lot more homes with any other, sports network that was out there. Evan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting. They had about 5 years before they even launched Marquee, they had wanted to do this. Now the problem they were in is that they had a grandfathered arrangement, between WGN. It was pretty fractured. WGN and Comcast Sportsnet Chicago or NBC Chicago, as it then became, or NBC Sports Chicago, whatever, and some other WCIU, some other little local ones. But part of that was that as a contingency of the sale, and I believe this had to do with Sam Zell, who had purchased the Tribune Company and its holdings, but had ownership in another team and had to sell the Cubs. That's who the Ricketts bought it from, in a very, very incredibly shady business deal that was fined significant money by the IRS afterwards. They had to maintain the television contracts as they were throughout the duration of those contracts, which ran like another 5 years, or actually longer than that. But anyway, they had to put together this fractured deal, and in between the time when they knew they wanted to start their own network and in the time when they did, the broadcast bubble burst. So you have the Los Angeles Dodgers, who I believe make somewhere in the neighborhood of $330 million a year from their deal with Sportsnet LA, which is, I don't know how many, $2.8 billion or 3-point-some billion over 20 years. Whatever the case may be, it's a phenomenally huge sum. So it's $330 million. They get paid to do nothing. The Dodgers invested no money in it. They don't own it. They just get paid $300 million a year just to have their games on TV. The Cubs, knowing what a bad deal that was, because at the time I think it's Spectrum is the owner of Sportsnet LA, and half the fans in Southern California do not have Spectrum and could not get it. The Cubs recognized that misstep. They knew it 5 years before it happened. They said they were going to avoid it, and yet when they go to launch it, they did so with high rates. The Cubs are half owners. The Cubs had to put up all kinds of capital to start that network, to hire people, to buy equipment, to set up the studio. So now they're already in the red to open this thing up in the first place. And then they don't get the big deals going on. And then COVID hits and everything else. And so this is a deal that's going to take several years to pay off versus these other previous deals that these other teams have signed that all they do is fill out a contract and then get paid millions and millions of dollars. So long answer to a short question, the Marquee deal absolutely screws the Cubs royally and may finally pay off, but here we're going to be in year 3 going into a full-on rebuild, and we're already at the end of the season. Like I pulled up the app for 5 minutes and watched the game, but I'd rather just listen to him on the radio in the background. I don't want to have to actually devote my time. How many people are going to devote their time to watching Frank Schwindel play? And that's a real name for people who aren't really following the Cubs. Like that's their actual.
You could have said anybody right there.
Right. Like that's like an actual name of a baseball player who's playing first base now instead of Anthony Rizzo. Right. Like who's.
I'm certainly not
tuning in to watch that. Right. Like why would you? And if you're not, then there's no advertising revenue. Right. Or advertisers aren't paying those premiums. And who's going to pay? The Cubs have the highest ticket prices in baseball. Who's going to pay for that? Anyway, I'm going much further than the question required.
Actually, you led right to my next question. So let me ask you this then, right? So what I hear a lot of there is business, right? I'm not really a business guy, but I have a semi-understanding of capitalism and business in America about how you want to just keep continuing to make money. You need to grow, expand, all the above. I understand that you can get leveraged and that you have loans on certain buildings and construction and all the above, right? I sort of have a grasp on all of that. But my question is, why would you outwardly do something that hurts the overall brand and product of your baseball team? Because wasn't he able to print money off of World Series merchandise when he put a winner on the field? So how do you think he goes about squaring something like that? That's my most interesting fact, because I love all of the hardcore ins and outs, monetary reasons that you just gave to everybody, because I'll summarize it by saying I made the joke many times that Ricketts is interested in playing Monopoly and not being a baseball owner. And what you just laid out, in fact, is what I meant by that offhand joke. So how do you think he squares those two things?
If you go back, I mean, a lot of the Ricketts kids sold their father, Joe, who, if anybody is not aware of him, is a a bigoted billionaire from Middle America. He's like the I don't know what, he's like the evil Warren Buffett or something. I don't know, except not quite as even that wealthy. Anyway, they had to borrow money from good old dad because he's the one who started the whole thing. And really, they sold him on the idea that the Cubs are a lifestyle. The Cubs are a culture, which is true to an extent, except, I think there was this idea that people are going to show up no matter what. And gosh, if we can win a World Series, that was always one of their stated goals, right? Win a World Series, maintain Wrigley Field, and be a good neighbor. They got one of those, and the second one, certainly they've changed it around a little bit, but they did renovate things and bring the place up to code. As far as being a good neighbor, that's a whole nother topic that I could certainly go into for quite some time. But the idea, I think, was that they felt that in addition to all this overall historical momentum, that if they can establish themselves as this World Series champion, that would fulfill this whole just one before I die concept that I think so many of us had. And I think what they failed to realize, and certainly this can go back to a great deal of other business missteps they've had, but just philosophically, is that, hey, from the time Sammy Sosa started bombing home runs, the Cubs ticket prices have risen steadily to the point where they are easily the highest price in the National League, and they rival the Red Sox and Yankees annually for the highest in the game. They've added, along with doing all these things to Wrigley, they've added all these premium suite experiences. And so that's going to drive those tickets up even higher. And so now you've got this, you've outpriced a lot of those fans who would be willing to show up for anything, right? Who don't care about the players in the jerseys, they just care about the laundry. They're there to go to Wrigley. They're there to go to a Cubs game. Well, guess what? That dad, that working class, blue collar dad that wants to take his son to a game, he can't even afford it anymore. Because it's, who knows what it is. If you don't get the ticket on the primary market, excuse me, I forgot the cough button. If you don't do that, you're so hosed with the cost. So again, I think what the Ricketts have done is completely overestimate fans' desire and ability to continue paying these high prices. And I think they're going to realize fairly soon that that's not the case. We're already seeing it. They're hemorrhaging season ticket holders. You look at these games, there's 25,000 people in the stands on a beautiful weekend in July, right? And now August. If that continues, like they're talking about, this isn't going to be a long rebuild. Well, it can't be a long rebuild, because if they continue to put out a crap product, they're not going to be able to continue pumping these fans for the highest ticket prices and still expect them to show up for an inferior product. It's just not going to work. And I think that was a misstep on owner. I know it was a misstep on ownership's part. I just don't think they thought fans would react as they have.
All right. Excuse me. Let me go here then. So you, I know, have seen a lot of fan reaction on your various social media circles. What are the basic defenses? Because unfortunately, I know that they're out there. What are the basic defenses for the reasons the Cubs have done this, and why fans are even not necessarily excited, but like, okay, I've accepted this and I'm ready to move on?
Can I do it in like a meatball voice?
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, these guys suck. They're overpaid prima donnas. If they really wanted to stay, they would have signed the contract with the Cubs. Cap said that they gave Chris Bryant $200 million, and he didn't want it, so screw that guy. You got to trade him. He sucks. He's no good in the clutch. Anthony Rizzo's old. His back sucks, and that Javi Baez swings at everything. He's a strikeout king. That guy sucks too. Send him to New York. That's what he deserves.
That's a great impression.
That's good. I like that an awful lot.
That's my Facebook impression, by the way. That's what Facebook sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely that's not Twitter. Twitter's much hipper than that, and it'd be much colorful, a little more colorful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, basically, what I'm hearing here, Jimmy, is that there's no defense whatsoever for the Tom Ricketts maneuver, and the Cubs can't defend it baseball-wise, so we're pretty excited about the Cubs moving forward, eh?
Very excited for the next few years. So, Evan, he wants the franchise to be as valuable as possible. He's selling everything, so it's getting more valuable. Doesn't it look like, and I know they're not doing this, but doesn't this look like they're trying to sell the team to get the highest value? But we know they're not doing that because of everything else they've done. So what are they doing?
Yeah, that's the weird part.
Isn't it?
Because, if you think about when the Tribune Company wanted to sell, What did they do? They went out and bought all these big name players. They signed big contracts with guys, and they try to make the product on the field, even though it didn't quite work out that way. They wanted it at least to look kind of sexy, like slap a fresh coat of paint on it. You know what I mean? Like put some toothpaste into the nail holes and repaint the walls and whatever. And they were able to kind of get more of a price for it. But what is kind of odd, if you're sitting there going, hey, look, dude, if you truly are at a point where you've got to cut salary in order to service the debt and you don't have the cash, sell it for $3 billion or $3.5 billion and just walk away. Like you more than tripled your investment, almost quadrupled it in the space of 12 or 13 years. Like, that's pretty good. And it kind of feels like, especially with things like the collective bargaining agreement coming up and certainly with the way COVID hit things, boy, it sure looks like they could get some money for it because the Mets sold in the midst of all that. You'd think you could find somebody to buy the Cubs, given what we've talked about with their value. But I don't know if they still see this as a longer play, because like if they can build it up even more, like, hey, gosh, what if we are able to rebuild them into more of a contender? If we can go through a couple of lean years, kind of build that cash back up, and then keep the value rolling, and 2-3 years down the road, now it's worth $5 billion and we can really sell it. So I don't know, again, what they've got some very creative accountants. I think clearly, as Rod mentioned earlier, a lot of these owners pay lower tax rates than the players they employ. So some of that accounting and some of the actuaries they've got in there might be looking at the projections and saying, hey, we're thinking this thing is trending toward doubling in value again in the next 5 years, so hold on to it. It's like a 401k for billionaires or whatever. But I don't really know, because it's an odd, whatever strategically they're doing, I don't completely understand it myself.
So, Chris, what I'm hearing here, and let's take it back to the NBA, where you and I we've been much more comfortable here recently. With the Cubs are now the new New York Knicks. Sell the team. It's going to be the new chant we're going to be yelling, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind having a different owner than Tom Ricketts. And from what Evan's been talking about, it really seems like maybe Hoyer's hands were tied. And that's kind of what I want to bring up next, too, is because, Evan, you've been putting a lot of print space towards Hoyer the last couple of days, I've noticed. Do you think he could have done things differently to help get that payroll down without selling the farm? Or do you think he really didn't have a choice but to get rid of these guys?
I think things probably, if they could have been done earlier, I think what you saw was this, and that's where some of his frustration came in. And while I don't begrudge someone speaking out of frustration, I think that when you are a public figure, whose job is to speak to the media and to be kind of diplomatic about it, it was a little bit odd for him to just throw all those players under the bus. It was beyond odd. I mean, I just thought it was a really stupid move because there was absolutely nothing to be gained from it. It looked like sour grapes. But, I do believe, again, if they were looking to move these things, move this money around or move some of these players, they could have done it certainly before they were right at the end of their time with the Cubs under the contract. You could have done it, and the timing, some of this is on the budget, that they weren't able to work out extensions. A lot of it's on the timing. Like if you were going to try to move Javier Baez or Anthony Rizzo or Chris Bryant individually or all in the same day, right, one of them at a time, it couldn't really happen prior to this. I mean, Bryant was hurt a lot of last season. Javier Baez had the worst season of his career. Anthony Rizzo had the worst of his career. So even if you were looking at it going, boy, we're not working anything out with these guys, we're going to have to move them, geez, you get a lot more value by trading them with a full year, except they're either hurt or we don't know if they're ever going to be good again, or other teams might be skeptical of how impactful they'll be. And so I think that was part of it. But, the idea, and it's people tend to fall on one side or the other, right? Like they'll climb up their little hill and they'll pull out their sword, just challenge anybody to fight them till they die there. And it's like, you don't have to just look at it and be like either Ricketts sucks or Hoyer sucks. Like they can both suck,
Hey, wait a minute now. You know what podcast you're on right now.
You don't have to hate one or the other, or and it doesn't have to be that like everybody thinks if I say it was stupid for them to trade everybody or they could have avoided this, that doesn't mean I feel like they should have signed every single one of them to a massive $200 million deal that stretches for 15 years and keeps them in Chicago until they're 50 years old, right? There's a lot of nuance that's in there. You could have re-signed one of them. You know what I mean? You could have made better offers to one of them, but I think in addition to just kind of, again, the sour grapey kind of flavor to Hoyer's words, is this idea that they offered them all these great contracts that are going to stand up well. And I don't believe that. I really don't, because
absolutely not based on what we saw.
Right, and Anthony Rizzo came out and said there's a common denominator here.
Yeah, is that Hoyer?
Yeah, he's like, there's a reason we're all gone. It's because the offer, and we heard the deals for Rizzo, and it doesn't, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it was back and it's this and that, and it's like, yeah, but at the same time, Paul Goldschmidt's older than Rizzo, and Goldschmidt's, he's held up a little bit better over the last couple of years, but we're looking at something commensurate in that range, around $100 million, $110 million or whatever. But Anthony Rizzo has been the team captain for a while and is more valuable to the Cubs in addition to what he does on the field with everything he does off and as an ambassador and that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's some intrinsic value there that normally you would pay for. But I find it very, very hard to believe that the money was really there in the budget for Hoyer to have done anything. Because if there had been, then at least one of these guys would still be wearing a Cubs uniform. I mean, that's just all there is to it. The money was not there, and it leads me to wonder whether the money's actually going to be there over the next couple of seasons, because if you're not willing to pay a guy now, one of your core key players, if your rebuild's really going to be quick, 2 years-ish, any one of those guys could still be playing in 3 years when you're trying to be competitive again. So I find very little veracity in the core of Hoyer's words.
Yeah, it's for me, I just don't know how I square moving forward with an owner like Ricketts based off what you just said right there, right? Are we supposed to believe that at some point this guy is going to pony up again? Because we basically saw him pony up once, as you've stated, right, after 2016, but that they punted on very, very quickly. And certainly they spent some money to get us there in 2016, but I wonder if it's all part of some big, long 10-year plan of where all we got to do is get the one World Series, we make some improvements around the place, we service the debt for a little while, we kick the can down the road, and then at some point we walk out of here complete billionaires. All meanwhile, Jimmy, I'm going to go to my favorite point right here. I know you've been waiting for it. This guy tells us that he is a lifelong Cub fan who met his wife in the bleachers and that he cares about Cub winning. And clearly you have seen in the past couple of days that he doesn't care that much about winning. And Mr. Altman just explained to you that all he wants to do is make money off of your back. So, Jimmy, square for me how you continue being a Cub fan moving forward.
It's going to be tough. I've needed a little while to kind of go away from that baseball. I will go back to the Cubs eventually because it's what I do, and I think that's what they're banking on. They're not getting any money from me. I'm not going to drive up to Chicago, and I can't get the Marquee Network. But no, this is tough because if if you're truly that fan and you're truly you want the Cubs to win, these don't make. It doesn't make sense that this is going to equal winning. And again, like Evan has mentioned a lot, it doesn't even make sense that this is going to equal more value to the franchise and more money coming in. So nothing works here. And by the way, I just want to go on a little rant here. The videos that they tweeted out or put on Facebook out were beautiful. How dare they do that to us? How dare they? I cried.
They don't even need to do it in the first place. They could have just signed these guys because have you looked around the other professional sports, Tommy Boy Ricketts? This is the cost of doing business, okay? You don't even have a salary cap. Owners in other professional sports league with salary caps are paying tax on top of that to keep winners on the field. This is the price of doing business. So, Chris, again, I will ask you the same question I asked Jimmy as we tend to wrap this up here because we're starting to keep Mr. Altman a little late into the evening. How do you square continuing to be a Cub fan knowing that you have an owner who only wants to scrape every last raking dollar out of you?
It's going to be hard. And I've been a Cubs fan my entire life, and you guys all know that's a long, long, long time.
Long time.
It's going to be tough, but I have definitely been a Cubs fan a whole lot longer than the Ricketts have been owners. I've seen multiple owners of the Cubs already in my lifetime, and I'll probably see a couple more. So I will still cheer for the guys out there on the field because they deserve to be cheered for. However, I will keep praying every day that Ricketts sells the team.
All right, there we go. So we are the new New York Knicks. So, Mr. Altman, this has been a whirlwind week for you. I would just ask for some of your closing thoughts here. How do you move forward at Cubs Insider? What do you take away now as being able to cover this sort of kind of on the inside there, right? You popped on 670 The Score up in Chicago. I'm sure you got a bunch of people checking in on all your guys' articles. Like your closing thoughts here as we are now a little further away from this debacle in Cubs history.
Yeah, well, for the first part of the question, I'm wearing just a purple T-shirt that says Stephen King Podcast, and I have some shorts on. So that's my clothing thoughts for now. But as for no, I mean I think here's the thing, right? Everything's still a little fresh, and the difficult part about what just happened is now we're left with this team that looks like 2012, 2013, the worst part of the start of the Theo Epstein era where we know they're not trying to win. And it's just difficult. Now, part of it, honestly, I will say it's a little bit better because now you're kind of untethered from caring at all because they're not trying to win. There's no shot at this year. And so realistically, you can let that go. Oh, the Cubs are on? Oh, man, I didn't even remember that. I just, God, they played a game this afternoon. Holy crap, it's already 6 o'clock and it's over. You can remove that, and it's actually kind of nice. You give yourself a little break from it. What we're going to see this winter is going to tell us a lot more about what they really plan to do moving forward over the next year, 2, 3 years, provided the CBA gets done and we actually have a labor piece. Because here's the deal. The Cubs in 2020, they didn't have to pay this all out because of COVID, but their payroll is $199 million. That's what it's supposed to be on the top line. This year it was $159. So they already cut $40 million off of it just with the players they all had. Next year they have around $50 million that's committed. Now some of that's going to increase with some of these guys getting arbitration raises and so forth, but there's only $50 million. They have only 3 players committed to contracts for next year. Again, outside of arbitration and rookie deals. Jason Hayward, Kyle Hendricks, and Wilson Contreras. No, I'm sorry, not even Contreras. David Bodie. Contreras is in his last year of arbitration. So 3 players, Bodie, Hayward, and Hendricks. They have to spend some money because they've got to field a team with 26 men. How much they go and spend will tell you a great deal. Is this going to be a 2 or 3 year? Like, are they going to go after some other free agents and really try to get this thing going and find some key pieces? Are they going to promote Brennan Davis? What do we see from him? As we go into next season, is he the super stud prospect who's going to come up? If not, if they punt that thing and don't spend, then you can really start to get pissed off. Because it's one thing now, and you're like, okay, well, hey, even the people who were like, well, maybe they'll spend some of that $150 million surplus. And hey, if the budget goes up to $200 million again next year, great. Then we can all be like, holy crap. Look at Ricketts giving us the okie doke, and he came back around and he actually did spend some of his money. I don't think the chances of that are high, so we'll see. But I would say, if you wanna know whether Hoyer and Ricketts are truthfully telling us that this is going to be a short rebuild, watch what they do this winter. That is going to tell you a whole hell of a lot because if they don't spend money and they just go to tank it again, you can't just then turn that around the following year. Baseball doesn't work that way, so we'll see.
Well, Mr. Altman, I want to thank you so very much for carving out a little bit of time and coming on here and making heads or tails of this horrible Cubs debacle. I want to invite you to come on in the future and talk about the Fast and the Furious movies with us, perhaps. I know you and I have discussed our mutual love for that. I know that you are a Wu-Tang Clan aficionado, so when we do our 90s hip-hop episode, I would absolutely love to have you on. You are welcome anytime, but I have a feeling baseball is going to go a little dark here on the Morgan Podcast Network, Balls and Brew, to be specific. But either of those two coming up in the near future, we will be glad to have you back on, and I thank you so much for all of your Cubs talk here, but we will be letting Tom Ricketts prove to us in the wintertime how much attention we will be paying to them next year, my friend.
That sounds good to me. You guys are kind of like my a podcast family, and as you know, you never turn your back on family. So
see, there he is. He's angling for the Furious Pod right there.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Well, so that we're going to wrap up here on this episode of Balls and Brew. Make sure you're paying attention to this feed for Mr. Jem Riska and I talking about wrestling, or me and the Mrs. Morgan, talking about something pop culturally. But I got to admit, Jimmy, I was going to bring you in here on this real quick. I'm holding off on the Morgan episodes for a little bit because I have no idea what I want to do for episode 100. So I'm slow playing Morgan episodes right now until I come up with a plan for that.
That's perfectly fine. We have a lot of wrestling to talk about. We're going to have some NBA news coming up here in the next week or so. So a lot of stuff to talk about, just not the Cubs.
That's right. Wu-Tang, if you're listening out there, which I guarantee you're not listening to this episode, but if you are, we want you on next week talking some NBA, and that's what we might be having in your future next week to talk about all of these free agent moves that just happened, chopping up a little bit of the draft. Love having Mr. Altman on. That was some good perspective. I must admit, I thought I was going to walk away from this a bit angrier than I am, and that's why he's one of the best in the biz, and that's why you should check out his work at Cubs Insider. Until next time, that's the Morgan Last word goes to you, Mr. King.
Goodbye, Internet.